Tonight, we begin Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, ancient reflections on discipline, character, and the nature of life. This reading is narrated in a calm, deep, male voice designed for sleep and reflection. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, the Roman Emperor, his first book, concerning himself, wherein Antoninus recordeth what and of whom, whether parents, friends, or masters, by their good examples or good advice and counsel, he had learned, divided into numbers or sections. Antoninus, Book 6, number 48. Whensoever thou wilt rejoice thyself, think and meditate upon those good parts and especial gifts, which thou hast observed in any of them that live with thee, as industry in one, in another modesty, in another bountifulness, in another some other thing. For nothing can so much rejoice thee as the resemblances and parallels of several virtues, eminent in the dispositions of them that live with thee, especially when all at once, as it were, they represent themselves upon thee. See therefore that thou have them always in a readiness. The first book. 1. Of my grandfather Verus, I have learned to be gentle and meek, and to refrain from all anger and passion. From the fame and memory of him that begot me, I have learned both shamefastness and manlike behavior. Of my mother, I have learned to be religious and bountiful, and to forbear, not only to do, but to intend any evil, to content myself with a spare diet, and to fly all such excess as is incidental to great wealth. Of my great-grandfather, both to frequent public schools and auditories, and to get me good and able teachers at home, and that I ought not to think much if such occasions I were at excessive charges. 2. Of him that brought me up, not to be fondly addicted to either of the two great factions of the coursers in the circus, called Prosceni and Veneti, nor in the amphitheatre, partially to favor any of the gladiators or fencers as either the Parmulari or the Secutores. Moreover, to endure labor, nor to need many things, when I have anything to do it myself rather than by others, not to meddle with any businesses, and not easily to admit of any slander. 3. Of Diognetus, not to busy myself about vain things, and not easily to believe those things, which are commonly spoken by such as take upon them to work wonders, and by sorcerers, or prestigitators and impostors, concerning the power of charms, and their driving out of demons or evil spirits, and the like. Not to keep quails for the game, nor to be mad after such things, not to be offended with other men's liberty of speech, and to apply myself unto philosophy. Him also I must thank, that ever I heard first Bacchius, then Tandasis, and Marcianus, and that I did write dialogues in my youth, and that I took liking to the philosophers' low couch and skins, and such other things, which by the Grecian disciplines are proper to those who profess philosophy. 4. To Rusticus I am beholding, that I first entered into the conceit that my life wanted some redress and cure, and then that I did not fall into the ambition of ordinary sophists, either to write tracts concerning the common theorems, or to exhort men unto virtue and the study of philosophy by public orations. As also that I never by way of ostentation did affect to throw myself, an active, able man, for any kind of bodily exercises, and that I gave over the study of rhetoric and poetry, and of elegant, neat language, that I did not use to walk about the house in my long robe, nor to do any such things. Moreover, I learned of him to write letters without any affectation or curiosity, such as that was which by him was written to my mother from Sinuessa, and to be easy and ready to be reconciled, and well pleased again with them that had offended me, as soon as any of them would be content to seek unto me again. To read with diligence, not to rest satisfied with a light and superficial knowledge, nor quickly to assent to things commonly spoken of, whom also I must thank that I ever lighted upon Epictetus his Hypomnemata, or moral commentaries and common factions, which also he gave me of his own. 5. From Apollonius, true liberty and unvariable steadfastness, and not to regard anything at all, though never so little, but light and reason, and always, whether in the sharpest pains, or after the loss of a child, or in long diseases, to be still the same man, who also was a present and visible example unto me, that it was possible for the same man to be both vehement and remiss, a man not subject to be vexed and offended with the incapacity of his scholars and auditors in his lectures and expositions, and a true pattern of a man who, of all his good gifts and faculties, least esteemed in himself that his excellent skill and ability to teach and persuade others the common theorems and maxims of the Stoic philosophy. Of him, also, I learned how to receive favors and kindnesses, as commonly they are accounted, from friends, so that I might not become obnoxious unto them, for them, nor more yielding upon occasion, than in right I ought, and yet so that I should not pass them neither as an unsensible and unthankful man. 6. Of Sextus, mildness, and the pattern of a family governed with paternal affection, and a purpose to live according to nature, to be grave without affectation, to observe carefully the several dispositions of my friends, not to be offended with idiots, nor unseasonably to set upon those that are carried with the vulgar opinions, with the theorems and tenets of philosophers. His conversation being an example how a man might accommodate himself to all men and companies, so that though his company were sweeter and more pleasing than any flatterer's cogging and fawning, yet was it at the same time most respected and reverenced, who also had a proper happiness and faculty, rationally and methodically to find out and set in order all the necessary determinations and instructions for a man's life, a man without ever the least appearance of anger or any other passion, able at the same time most exactly to observe the Stoic apatheia, or unpassionateness, and yet to be most tender-hearted, ever of good credit, and yet almost without any noise or rumor, very learned, and yet making little show. 7. From Alexander the grammarian, to be unreprovable myself, and not reproachfully to reprehend any man for a barbarism or solecism, or any false pronunciation, but dexterously by way of answer or testimony or confirmation of the same matter, taking no notice of the word, to utter it as should have been spoken, or by some other such close and indirect admonition, handsomely and civilly to tell him of it. 8. Affronto to how much envy and fraud and hypocrisy the state of a tyrannous king is subject unto, and how they who are commonly called eupatridas, i.e., nobly born, are in some sort incapable or void of natural affection. 9. Of Alexander the Platonic, not often nor without great necessity to say, or to write to any man in a letter, I am not at leisure, nor in this manner still to put off those duties which we owe to our friends and acquaintances, to every one in his kind, under pretense of urgent affairs. 10. Of Catullus, not to contemn any friend's expostulation, though unjust, but to strive to reduce him to his former disposition, freely and heartily to speak well of all my masters upon any occasion, as it is reported of Domitius and Athenodotus, and to love my children with true affection. 11. From my brother Severus, to be kind and loving to all them of my house and family, by whom also I came to the knowledge of Thracia and Helvidius, and Cato and Dio, and Brutus. He it was also that did put me in the first conceit and desire of an equal commonwealth, administered by justice and equality, and of a kingdom wherein should be regarded nothing more than the good and welfare of the subjects. Of him also to observe a constant tenor, not interrupted with any other cares and distractions, in the study and esteem of philosophy, to be bountiful and liberal in the largest measure, always to hope the best, and to be confident that my friends love me, in whom I moreover observed an open dealing toward those whom he reproved at any time, and that his friends might without all doubt or observation know what he would or would not, so open and plain was he. 12. From Claudius Maximus, in all things to endeavor to have power of myself, and in nothing to be carried about, to be cheerful and courageous in all sudden chances and accidents, as in sickness, to love mildness and moderation and gravity, and to do my business, whatsoever it be, thoroughly and without querulousness. Whatsoever he said, all men believed him that as he spake, so he thought, and whatsoever he did, that he did it with a good intent. His manner was never to wonder at anything, never to be in haste, and yet never slow, nor to be perplexed or dejected, or at any time unseemly or excessively to laugh, nor to be angry or suspicious, but ever ready to do good and to forgive and to speak truth. And all this as one that seemed rather of himself to have been straight and right than ever to have been rectified or redressed. Neither was there any man that thought of himself undervalued by him, or that could find in his heart to think himself a better man than he. He would be very pleasant and gracious. 13. In my father I observed his meekness, his constancy without wavering in those things, which after a due examination and deliberation he had determined, how free from all vanity he carried himself in matter of honor and dignity, as they are esteemed. His laboriousness and assiduity, his readiness to hear any man that had aught to say tending to any common good, how generally and impartially he would give every man his due, his skill and knowledge, when rigor and extremity, or when remissness and moderation was in season. How he did abstain from all unchaste love of youths, his moderate condescending to other men's occasions as an ordinary man, neither absolutely requiring of his friends that they should wait upon him at his ordinary meals, nor that they should of necessity accompany him in his journeys, and that whensoever any business upon some necessary occasions was to be put off and omitted before it could be ended, he was ever found when he went about it again, the same man that he was before. His accurate examination of things in consultations, and patient hearing of others. He would not hastily give over the search of the matter, as one easily to be satisfied with sudden notions and apprehensions. His care to preserve his friends, how neither at any time he would carry himself toward them with disdainful neglect, and grow weary of them, nor yet at any time be madly fond of them. His contented mind in all things, his cheerful countenance, his care to foresee things afar off, and to take order for the least, without any noise or clamor. Moreover, how all acclamations and flattery were repressed by him. How carefully he observed all things necessary to the government, and kept an account of the common expenses. And how patiently he did abide that he was reprehended by some of this his strict and rigid kind of dealing. How he was neither a superstitious worshipper of the gods, nor an ambitious pleaser of men, or studious of popular applause, but sober in all things, and everywhere observant of that which was fitting, no affecter of novelties, in those things which conduced to his ease and convenience, plenty whereof his fortune did afford him, without pride and begging, yet with all freedom and liberty, so that as he did freely enjoy them without any anxiety or affectation when they were present, so when absent he found no want of them. Moreover, that he was never commended by any man as either a learned acute man, or an obsequious officious man, or a fine orator, but as a ripe mature man, a perfect sound man, one that could not endure to be flattered, able to govern both himself and others. Moreover, how much he did honor all true philosophers, without upbraiding those that were not so. His sociableness, his gracious and delightful conversation, but never unto satiety. His care of his body within bounds and measure, not as one that desired to live long or over-studious of neatness and elegancy, and yet not as one that did not regard it, so that though his own care and providence, he seldom needed any inward physic or outward applications, but especially how ingeniously he would yield to any that had obtained any peculiar faculty, as either eloquence, or the knowledge of the laws, or of ancient customs, or the like, and how he concurred with them in his best care and endeavor that every one of them might in his kind, for that wherein he excelled, be regarded and esteemed. And although he did all things carefully, after the ancient customs of his forefathers, yet even in this he was not so desirous that men should take notice that he did imitate ancient customs. Again, that secrets he neither had many or often, and such only as concerned public matters, his discretion and moderation, in exhibiting of the public sights and shows for the pleasure and pastime of the people, and public buildings, congiaries, and the like. In all these things, having a respect unto men only as men, and to the equity of the things themselves, and not unto the glory that might follow. Never wont to use the baths at unseasonable hours. No builder, never curious or solicitous, either about his meat, or about the workmanship or color of his clothes, or about anything that belonged to external beauty. In all his conversation, far from all inhumanity, all boldness and incivility, all greediness and impetuosity, never doing anything with such earnestness and intention that a man could say of him that he did sweat about him, but contrariwise, all things distinctly, as at leisure, without trouble, orderly, soundly, and agreeably. A man might have applied that to him, which is recorded of Socrates, that he knew how to want and to enjoy those things, in the want whereof most men show themselves weak, and in the fruition intemperate, but to hold out firm and constant, and to keep within the compass of true moderation and sobriety in either estate, is proper to a man who hath a perfect and invincible soul, such as he showed himself in the sickness of Maximus. 14. From the gods I received that I had good grandfathers and parents, a good sister, good masters, good domestics, loving kinsmen, almost all that I have, and that I never, through haste and rashness, transgressed against any of them, notwithstanding that my disposition was such, as that such a thing, if occasion had been, might very well have been committed by me, but that it was the mercy of the gods to prevent such a concurring of matters and occasions as might make me to incur this blame. That I was not long brought up by the concubine of my father, that I preserved the flower of my youth, that I took not upon me to be a man before my time, but rather put it off longer than I needed, that I lived under the government of my Lord and Father, who would take away from me all pride and vainglory, and reduce me to that conceit and opinion that it was not impossible for a prince to live in the court without a troop of guards and followers, extraordinary apparel, such and such torches and statues, and other like particulars of state and magnificence, but that a man may reduce and contract himself almost to the state of a private man, and yet for all that not to become the more base and remiss in those public matters and affairs, wherein power and authority is requisite. That I have such a brother, who by his own example might stir me up to think of myself, and by my respect and love delight and please me. That I have got ingenuous children, and that they were not born distorted or with any other natural deformity. That I was no great proficient in the study of rhetoric and poetry, and of other faculties, which perchance I might have dwelt upon, if I had found myself to go on in them with success. That I did by times prefer those by whom I was brought up to such places and dignities, which they seemed unto me most to desire, and that I did not put them off with hope and expectation that, since that they were yet but young, I would do the same hereafter. That I ever knew Apollonius and Rusticus and Maximus, that I have had occasion often and effectually to consider and meditate with myself concerning that life which is according to nature, what the nature and manner of it is, so that as for the gods and such suggestions, helps, and inspirations as might be expected from them, nothing did hinder, but that I might have begun long before to live according to nature, or that even now that I was not yet partaker and in present possession of that life, that I myself, and that I did not observe those inward notions and suggestions, yea, and almost plain and apparent instructions and admonitions of the gods, was the only cause of it. That my body in such a life hath able to hold out so long. That I never had to do with Benedicta and Theodotus, yea, and afterwards, when I fell into some fits of love, I was soon cured. That having often displeased with Rusticus, I never did him anything for which afterwards I had occasion to repent. That it being so that my mother was to die young, yet she lived with me all her latter years. That as often as I had purposed to help and succor any that either were poor or fallen into some present necessity, I never was answered by my officers that there was not ready money enough to do it, and that I myself never had occasion to require the like succor from any other. That I have such a wife, so obedient, so loving, so ingenuous. That I had choice of fit and able men, to whom I might commit the bringing up of my children. That by dreams I have received help, as for other things, so in particular, how I might stay my casting of blood, and cure my dizziness, as that also that happened to thee in Caheta, as unto Chryses, when he prayed by the seashore. And when I did first apply myself to philosophy, that I did not fall into the hands of some sophists, or spent my time either in reading the manifold volumes of ordinary philosophers, nor in practicing myself in the solution of arguments and fallacies, nor dwelt upon the studies of the meteors and other natural curiosities. All these things, without the assistance of the gods and fortune, could not have been. 15. In the country of the Quadi at Granua, these. Betimes in the morning say to thyself, this day I shalt have to do with an idle, curious man, with an unthankful man, a railer, a crafty, false, or an envious man, an unsociable, uncharitable man. All these ill qualities have happened unto them, through ignorance of that which is truly good and truly bad. But I that understand the nature of that which is good, that it only is to be desired, and of that which is bad, that it only is truly odious and shameful, who know, moreover, that this transgressor, whosoever he be, is my kinsman, not by the same blood and seed, but by participation of the same reason, and of the same divine particle. How can I either be hurt by any of those, since it is not in their power to make me incur anything that is truly reproachful, or angry and ill affected towards him, who by nature is so near unto me? For we are all born to be fellow workers, as the feet, the hands, and the eyelids, as the row of the upper and under teeth. For such, therefore, to be in opposition is against nature. And what is it to chafe at, and to be averse from, but to be in opposition? 16. Whatsoever I am is either flesh, or life, or that which we commonly call the mistress and overruling part of man, reason. Away with thy books. Suffer not thy mind any more to be distracted and carried to and fro, for it will not be. But as even now ready to die, think little of thy flesh, blood, bones, and a skin, a pretty piece of knit and twisted work, consisting of nerves, veins, and arteries. Think no more of it than so. And as for thy life, consider what it is, a wind, not one constant wind neither, but every moment of an hour let out and sucked in again. The third is thy ruling part, and here consider. Thou art an old man. Suffer not that excellent part to be brought in subjection, and to become slavish. Suffer it not to be drawn up and down with unreasonable and unsociable lusts and motions, as it were with wires and nerves. Suffer it not any more, either to repine at anything now present, or to fear and fly anything to come, which the destiny hath appointed thee. 17. Whatsoever proceeds from the gods immediately, that any man will grant totally depends from their divine providence. As for those things that are commonly said to happen by fortune, even those must be conceived to have dependence from nature, or from the first and general connection and concatenation of all those things, which more apparently by the divine providence are administered and brought to pass. All things flow from thence, and whatsoever it is that is both necessary and conducing to the whole, part of which thou art, and whatsoever it is that is requisite and necessary for the preservation of the general, must of necessity for every particular nature be good and be hopeful. And as for the whole, it is preserved, as by the perpetual mutation and conversion of the simple elements one into another, so also by the mutation and alteration of things mixed and compounded. Let these things suffice thee, let them be always unto thee, as thy general rules and precepts. As for thy thirst after books, away with it with all speed, that thou die not murmuring and complaining, but truly meek and well satisfied, and from thy heart thankful unto the gods. The second book. 1. Remember how long thou hast already put off these things, and how often a certain day and hour, as it were, having been set unto thee by the gods, thou hast neglected it. It is high time for thee to understand the true nature both of the world, whereof thou art a part, and of that Lord and Governor of the world, from whom, as a channel from the spring, thou thyself didst flow, and that there is but a certain limit of time appointed unto thee, which if thou shalt not make use of to calm and allay the many distempers of thy soul, it will pass away, and thou with it, and never after return. 2. Let it be thy earnest and incessant care as a Roman and a man to perform whatsoever it is thou art about, with true and unfeigned gravity, natural affection, freedom, and justice. And as for all other cares and imaginations, how thou mayest ease thy mind of them, which thou shalt do, if thou shalt go about every action as thy last action, free from all vanity, all passionate and wilful aberration from reason, and from all hypocrisy and self-love and dislike of those things, which by the fates or appointment of God have happened unto thee. Thou seest that those things, which for a man to hold on in a prosperous course and to live a divine life are requisite and necessary, are not many. For the gods will require no more of any man that shall but keep and observe these things. 3. Do, soul, do. Abuse and contemn thyself. Yet a while, and the time for thee to respect thyself will be at an end. Every man's happiness depends from himself. But behold, thy life is almost at an end. Whilst affording thyself no respect, thou dost make thy happiness to consist in the souls and conceits of other men. 4. Why should any of these things that happen externally so much distract thee? Give thyself leisure to learn some good thing, and cease roving and wandering to and fro. Thou must also take heed of another kind of wandering, for they are idle in their actions, who toil and labor in this life, and have no certain scope to which to direct all their motions and desires. 5. For not observing the state of another man's soul, scarce was ever any man known to be unhappy. Tell whosoever they be, that intend not, and guide not by reason and discretion the motions of their own souls, they must of necessity be unhappy. 6. These things thou must always have in mind. What is the nature of the universe, and what is mine in particular? This unto that what relation it hath, what kind of part, of what kind of universe it is, and that there is no body that can hinder thee, but that thou mayest always both do and speak those things which are agreeable to that nature, whereof thou art a part. 7. Theophrastus, where he compares sin with sin, as after a vulgar sense such things I grant may be compared, says well and like a philosopher, that those sins are greater which are committed through lust than those which are committed through anger. For he that is angry seems with a kind of grief and close contraction of himself to turn away from reason. But he that sins through lust, being overcome by pleasure, doth in his very sin bewray a more impotent and unmanlike disposition. Well then, and like a philosopher doth he say, that he of the two is the more to be condemned, that sins with pleasure, than he that sins with grief. For indeed this latter may seem first to have been wronged, and so in some manner, through grief thereof, to have been forced to be angry, whereas he who through lust doth commit anything, did of himself merely resolve upon that action. 8. Whatsoever thou dost effect, whatsoever thou dost project, so do, and so project all, as one who, for aught thou knowest, may at this very present depart out of this life. And as for death, if there be any gods, it is no grievous thing to leave the society of men. The gods will do thee no hurt, thou mayest be sure. But if it be so that there be no gods, or that they take no care of the world, why should I desire to live in a world void of gods and of all divine providence? But gods there be certainly, and they take care of the world. And as for those things which be truly evil, as vice and wickedness, such things they have put in a man's own power, that he might avoid them if he would. And had there been anything besides that had been truly bad and evil, they would have had a care of that also, that a man might have avoided it. But why should that be thought to hurt and prejudice a man's life in this world, which cannot any ways make man himself the better or the worse in his own person? Neither must we think that the nature of the universe did either through ignorance pass these things, or if not as ignorant of them, yet as unable either to prevent or better to order and dispose them. It cannot be that she, through want either of power or skill, should have committed such a thing, so as to suffer all things both good and bad, equally and promiscuously, to happen unto both good and bad. As for life, therefore, and death, honor and dishonor, labor and pleasure, riches and poverty, all these things happen unto men indeed, both good and bad equally. But as things which of themselves are neither good nor bad, because of themselves neither shameful nor praiseworthy. 9. Consider how quickly all things are dissolved and resolved, the bodies and substances themselves, into the matter and substance of the world, and their memories into the general age and time of the world. Consider the nature of all worldly sensible things, of those especially which either ensnare by pleasure, or for their irksomeness are dreadful, or for their outward luster and show are in great esteem and request. How vile and contemptible, how base and corruptible, how destitute of all true life and being they are. 11. Consider with thyself how man, and by what part of his, is joined unto God, and how that part of man is affected when it is said to be diffused. There is nothing more wretched than that soul, which in a kind of circuit compasseth all things, searching, as he saith, even the very depths of the earth, and by all signs and conjectures prying into the very thoughts of other men's souls, and yet of this is not sensible that it is sufficient for a man to apply himself wholly, and to confine all his thoughts and cares to the tendance of that spirit which is within him, and truly and really to serve him. His service doth consist in this, that a man keep himself pure from all violent passion and evil affection, from all rashness and vanity, and from all manner of discontent, either in regard of the gods or men. For indeed, whatsoever proceeds from the gods deserves respect for their worth and excellency, and whatsoever proceeds from men, as they are our kinsmen, should by us be entertained with love always, sometimes as proceeding from their ignorance of that which is truly good and bad, a blindness no less than that by which we are not able to discern between white and black, with a kind of pity and compassion also. 12. If thou shouldst live 3,000 or as many as 10,000 of years, yet remember this, that man can part with no life properly, save with that little part of life which he now lives. And that which he lives is no other than that which at very instant he parts with. That then, which is longest of duration, and that which is shortest, come both to one effect. For although in regard of that which is already past, there may be some inequality, yet that time which is now present and in being is equal unto all men. And that being which we part with whensoever we die, it doth manifestly appear that it can be but a moment of time that we then part with. For as for that which is either past or to come, a man cannot be said properly to part with it. For how should a man part with that which he hath not? These two things therefore thou must remember. First, that all things in the world from all eternity, by a perpetual revolution of the same times and things ever continued and renewed, are of one kind and nature, so that whether for 100 or 200 years only, or for an infinite space of time, a man see those things which are still the same, it can be no matter of great moment. And secondly, that life which any the longest liver or the shortest liver parts with is for length and duration the very same. For that only which is present is that, which either of them can lose, as being that only which they have. For that which he hath not, no man can truly be said to lose. 13. Remember that all is but opinion and conceit. For those things are plain and apparent, which were spoken unto Monimus the Cynic. And as plain and apparent is the use that may be made of those things, if that which is true and serious in them be received as well as that which is sweet and pleasing. 14. A man's soul doth wrong and disrespect itself first and especially, when as much as in itself lies, it becomes an aposteme, and as it were an excrescency of the world, for to be grieved and displeased with anything that happens in the world is direct apostasy from the nature of the universe, part of which all particular natures of the world are. Secondly, when she either is averse from any man, or led by contrary desires or affections, tending to his hurt and prejudice, such as are the souls of them that are angry. Thirdly, when she is overcome by any pleasure or pain. Fourthly, when she doth dissemble, and covertly and falsely either doth or saith anything. Fifthly, when she doth either affect or endeavor anything to no certain end, but rashly and without due ratiocination and consideration, how consequent or inconsequent it is to the common end. For even the least things ought not to be done without relation unto the end. And the end of the reasonable creatures is to follow and obey him, who is the reason, as it were, and the law of this great city and ancient commonwealth. 15. The time of a man's life is as a point, the substance of it ever flowing, the sense obscure, and the whole composition of the body tending to corruption. His soul is restless, fortune uncertain, and fame doubtful. To be brief, as a stream, so are all things belonging to the body. As a dream, or as a smoke, so are all that belong unto the soul. Our life is as a warfare, and a mere pilgrimage. Fame after life is no better than oblivion. What is it, then, that will adhere and follow? Only one thing, philosophy. And philosophy doth consist in this: for a man to preserve that spirit which is within him, from all manner of contumelies and injuries, and above all pains or pleasures, never to do anything either rashly or feignedly or hypocritically, wholly to depend from himself and his own proper actions, all things that happen unto him to embrace contentedly, as coming from him from whom he himself also came, and above all things, with all meekness and a calm cheerfulness, to expect death, as being nothing else but the resolution of those elements, of which every creature is composed. And if the elements themselves suffer nothing by this their perpetual conversion of one into another, that dissolution and alteration, which is so common unto all, why should it be feared by any? Is not this according to nature? But nothing that is according to nature can be evil. Whilst I was at Carnuntum. The third book. 1. A man must not only consider how daily his life wasteth and decreaseth, but this also, that if he live long, he cannot be certain whether his understanding shall continue so able and sufficient, for either discreet consideration in matter of business, or for contemplation, it being the thing whereon true knowledge of things both divine and human doth depend. For if once he shall begin to dote, his respiration, nutrition, his imaginative and appetitive, and his other natural faculties may still continue the same. He shall find no want of them. But how to make that right use of himself that he should? How to observe exactly in all things that which is right and just? How to redress and rectify all wrong, or sudden apprehensions and imaginations? And even of this particular, whether he should live any longer or no, to consider duly. For all such things, wherein the best strength and vigor of the mind is most requisite, his power and ability will be past and gone. Thou must hasten, therefore, not only because thou art every day nearer unto death than other, but also because the intellective faculty in thee, whereby thou art enabled to know the true nature of things, and to order all thy actions by that knowledge, doth daily waste and decay, or may fail thee before thou die. 2. This also thou must observe, that whatsoever it is that naturally doth happen to things natural, hath somewhat in itself that is pleasing and delightful, as a great loaf when it is baked, some parts of it cleaved as it were, and part asunder, and make the crust of it rugged and unequal. And yet those parts of it, though in some sort it be against the art and intention of baking itself, that they are thus cleft and parted, which should have been and were first made all even and uniform. They become it well, nevertheless, and have a certain peculiar property to stir the appetite. So figs are accounted fairest and ripest then, when they begin to shrink and wither as it were. So ripe olives, when they are next to putrefaction, then are they in their proper beauty. The hanging down of grapes, the brow of the lion, the froth of a foaming wild boar, and many other like things, though by themselves considered, they are far from any beauty. Yet because they happen naturally, they are both comely and delightful, so that if a man shall with a profound mind and apprehension consider all things in the world, even among all those things which are but mere accessories and natural appendices as it were, there will scarce appear anything unto him, wherein he will not find matter of pleasure and delight. So will he behold with as much pleasure the true rictus of wild beasts, as those which by skillful painters and other artificers are imitated. So will he be able to perceive the proper ripeness and beauty of old age, whether in man or woman, and whatever else it is that is beautiful and alluring in whatsoever is. With chaste and continent eyes he will soon find out and discern. Those and many other things will he discern, not credible unto every one, but unto them only who are truly and familiarly acquainted, both with nature itself and all natural things. 3. Hippocrates, having cured many sicknesses, fell sick himself and died. The Chaldeans and astrologians, having foretold the death of divers, were afterwards themselves surprised by the fates. Alexander and Pompeius and Caius Caesar, having destroyed so many towns and cut off in the field so many thousands both of horse and foot, yet they themselves at last were fain to part with their own lives. Heraclitus, having written so many natural tracts concerning the last and general conflagration of the world, died afterwards, all filled with water within, and all bedaubed with dirt and dung without. Lice killed Democritus, and Socrates, another sort of vermin, wicked, ungodly men. How then stands the case? Thou hast taken ship, thou hast sailed, thou art come to land, go out, if to another life, there also shalt thou find gods, who are everywhere. If all life and sense shall cease, then shalt thou cease also to be subject to either pains or pleasures, and to serve and tend this vile cottage, so much the viler, by how much that which ministers unto it doth excel, the one being a rational substance, and a spirit, the other nothing but earth and blood. 4. Spend not the remnant of thy days in thoughts and fancies concerning other men, when it is not in relation to some common good, when by thou art hindered from some other better work. That is, spend not thy time in thinking what such a man doth, and to what end, what he saith, and what he thinks, and what he is about, and such other things or curiosities, which make a man to rove and wander from the care and observation of that part of himself which is rational and overruling. See therefore in the whole series and connection of thy thoughts, that thou be careful to prevent whatsoever is idle and impertinent, but especially whatsoever is curious and malicious. And thou must use thyself to think only of such things, of which if a man such a sudden should ask thee what it is that thou art now thinking, thou may answer this and that freely and boldly, that so by thy thoughts it may presently appear that in all thee is sincere and peaceable, as becometh one that is made for society, and regards not pleasures, nor gives away to any voluptuous imaginations at all, free from all contentiousness, envy, and suspicion, and from whatsoever else thou wouldest blush to confess, thy thoughts were set upon. He that is such is he surely that doth not put off to lay hold on that which is best indeed. A very priest and minister of the gods, well acquainted and in good correspondence with him, especially that is seated and placed with himself, as in a temple or sacrary, to whom he also keeps and preserves himself unspotted by pleasure, undaunted by pain, free from any manner of wrong, or contumely by himself offered unto himself, not capable of any evil from others, a wrestler of the best sort, and for the highest prize, that he may not be cast down by any passion or affection of his own, deeply dyed and drenched in righteousness, embracing and accepting with his whole heart whatsoever either happeneth or is allotted unto him. One who not often, nor without some great necessity, tending to some public good, mindeth what any other either speaks or doth or purposeth, for those things only that are in his own power, or that are truly his own, are the objects of his employments, and his thoughts are ever taken up with those things, which of the whole universe are by the fates or providence destinated or appropriated unto himself. Those things that are his own, and in his own power, he himself takes order, for that they be good, and as for those that happen unto him, he believes them to be so, for that lot and portion which is assigned to every one, as it is unavoidable and necessary, so it is always profitable. He remembers, besides, that whatsoever partakes of reason is akin unto him, and that to care for all men generally is agreeing to the nature of a man, But as for honor and praise, that they ought not generally to be admitted and accepted of from all, but from such only who live according to nature. As for them that do not, what manner of men they be at home or abroad, day or night, how conditioned themselves with what manner of conditions, or with men of what conditions they moil and pass away the time together, he knoweth, and remember right well. He therefore regards not such praise and approbation as proceeding from them who cannot like and approve themselves. 5. Do nothing against thy will, nor contrary to the community, nor without due examination, nor with reluctancy. Affect not to set out thy thoughts with curious neat language. Be neither a great talker nor a great undertaker. Moreover, let thy God that it is in thee to rule over thee find by thee that he hath to do with a man, an aged man, a sociable man, a Roman, a prince, one that hath ordered his life, as one that expecteth, as it were, nothing but the sound of the trumpet, sounding a retreat to depart out of this life with all expedition. One who for his word or actions needs neither an oath nor any man to be a witness. 6. To be cheerful, and to stand in no need either of other men's help or attendance, or of that rest and tranquillity which thou must be beholding to others for. Rather like one that is straight of himself, or hath ever been straight, than one that hath been rectified. 7. If thou shalt find anything in this mortal life better than righteousness, than truth, temperance, fortitude, or in general better than a mind contented both with those things which is according to right and reason she doth, and in those which without her will and knowledge happen unto thee by the providence. If I say, thou canst find out anything better than this, apply thyself unto it with thy whole heart, and that which is best wheresoever thou dost find it, enjoy freely. But if nothing thou shalt find worthy to be preferred to that spirit which is within thee, if nothing better than to subject unto thee thine own lusts and desires, and not to give way to any fancies or imaginations before thou hast duly considered of them, nothing better than to withdraw thyself, to use Socrates' his words, from all sensuality, and submit thyself unto the gods, and to have care of all men in general. If thou shalt find that all other things in comparison of this are but vile and of little moment, then give not way to any other thing, which being once though but affected and inclined unto, it will no more be in thy power without all distraction as thou oughtst to prefer and to pursue after that good which is thine own and thy proper good. For it is not lawful that anything that is of another an inferior kind and nature, be it what it will, as either popular applause or honor or riches or pleasure, should be suffered to confront and contest as it were, with that which is rational and operatively good. For all these things, if once though, but for a while, they begin to please, they presently prevail and pervert a man's mind, or turn a man from the right way. Do thou therefore, I say absolutely and freely, make choice of that which is best, and stick unto it. Now, that they say is best, which is most profitable? If they mean profitable to a man as he is a rational man, stand thou to it, and maintain it. But if they mean profitable as he is a creature, only reject it. From this thy tenet and conclusion keep off carefully all plausible shows and colors of external appearance, that thou mayest be able to discern things rightly. 8. Never esteem of anything as profitable, which shall ever constrain thee either to break thy faith or to lose thy modesty, to hate any man, to suspect, to curse, to dissemble, to lust after anything that requireth the secret of walls or veils. But he that preferreth before all things his rational part and spirit, and the sacred mysteries of virtue which issueth from it, he shall never lament and exclaim, never sigh, he shall never want either solitude or company. And which is chiefest of all, he shall live without either desire or fear. And as for life, whether for a long or short time, he shall enjoy his soul thus compassed about with a body. He is altogether indifferent. For if even now he were to depart, he is as ready for it as for any other action, which may be performed with modesty and decency. For all his life long, this is his only care, that his mind may always be occupied in such intentions and objects as are proper to a rational, sociable creature. 9. In the mind that is once truly disciplined and purged, thou canst not find anything either foul or impure, or as it were festered. Nothing that is either servile or affected, no partial tie, no malicious averseness, nothing obnoxious, nothing concealed. The life of such a one, death can never surprise as imperfect, or as an actor that should die before he has ended, or the play itself were at an end, a man might speak. 10. Use thine opinative faculty with all honor and respect, for in her indeed is all, that thy opinion do not beget in thy understanding anything contrary to either nature or the proper constitution of a rational creature. The end and object of a rational constitution is to do nothing rashly, to be kindly affected towards men, and in all things willingly to submit unto the gods. Casting therefore all other things aside, keep thyself to these few, and remember withal that no man properly can be said to live more than that which is now present, which is but a moment of time. Whatsoever is besides, either is already past or uncertain. The time therefore that any man doth live is but a little, and the place where he liveth is but a very little corner of the earth. And the greatest fame that can remain of a man after his death, even that is but little, and that too, such as it is whilst it is by the succession of silly mortal men preserved, who likewise shall shortly die, and even whilst they live, know not what in very deed they themselves are, and much less can know one who long before is dead and gone. 11. To those ever-present helps and mementos, let one more be added, ever to make a particular description and delineation, as it were, of every object that presents itself to thy mind, that thou mayest wholly and thoroughly contemplate it in its own proper nature, bare and naked, wholly and severally, divided into its several parts and quarters, and then by thyself in thy mind to call both it and those things of which it doth consist, and in which it shall be resolved, by their own proper true names and appellations. For there is nothing so effectual to beget true magnanimity, as to be able truly and methodically to examine and consider all things that happen in this life, and so to penetrate into their natures, that at the same time this also may concur in our apprehensions. What is the true use of it? And what is the true nature of this universe, to which it is useful? How much in regard of the universe may be esteemed? How much in regard of man, a citizen of the supreme city, of which all other cities in the world are, as it were, but houses and families? 12. What is this that now my fancy is set upon? Of what things doth it consist? How long can it last? Which of all the virtues is the proper virtue for this present use? As whether meekness, fortitude, truth, faith, sincerity, contentation, or any of the rest. Of everything, therefore, thou must use thyself to say, this immediately comes from God. This by that fatal connection and concatenation of things, or, which almost comes to one, by some coincidental casualty. And as for this, it proceeds from my neighbor, my kinsman, my fellow, through his ignorance indeed, because he knows not what is truly natural unto him. But I know it, and therefore carry myself towards him according to the natural law of fellowship, that is kindly and justly. As for those things that of themselves are altogether indifferent, as in my best judgment I conceive everything to deserve more or less, so I carry myself towards it. 13. If thou shalt intend that which is present, following the rule of right and reason carefully, solidly, meekly, and shalt not intermix with any other businesses, but shall study this only to preserve thy spirit unpolluted and pure, and shall cleave unto him without either hope or fear of anything, in all things that thou shalt either do or speak, contenting thyself with heroical truth, thou shalt live happily, and from this there is no man that can hinder thee. 14. As physicians and chirurgeons have always their instruments ready at hand for all sudden cures, so have thou always thy dogmata in a readiness for the knowledge of things, both divine and human. And whatsoever thou dost, even in the smallest things that thou dost, thou must ever remember that mutual relation and connection that is between these two things divine and things human. For without relation unto God, thou shalt never speed in any worldly actions, nor on the other side in any divine, without some respect had to things human. 15. Be not deceived, for thou shalt never live to read thy moral commentaries, nor the acts of the famous Romans and Grecians, nor those excerpta from several books, all which thou hadst provided and laid up for thyself against thine old age. Hasten therefore to an end, and giving over all vain hopes, help thyself in time if thou carest for thyself as thou oughtest to do. 16. To steal, to sow, to buy, to be at rest, to see what is to be done, which is not seen by the eyes, but by another kind of sight, what these words mean, and how many ways to be understood, they do not understand. The body, the soul, the understanding. As the senses naturally belong to the body, and the desires and affections to the soul, so do the dogmata to the understanding. 17. To be capable of fancies and imaginations is common to man and beast. To be violently drawn and moved by the lusts and desires of the soul is proper to wild beasts and monsters, such as Phalaris and Nero were. To follow reason for ordinary duties and actions is common to them also, who believe not that there be any gods, and for their advantage would make no conscience to betray their own country, and who, when once the doors be shut upon them, dare do anything. If therefore all things else be common to these likewise, it follows that for a man to like and embrace all things that happened and are destinated unto him, and not to trouble and molest that spirit which is seated in the temple of his own breast, with a multitude of vain fancies and imaginations, but to keep him propitious and to obey him as a God, never either speaking anything contrary to truth or doing anything contrary to justice, is the only true property of a good man. And such as one, though no man should believe that he liveth as he doth, either sincerely or conscionably, or cheerful and contentedly, yet is he either with any man at all angry for it, nor diverted by it from the way that leadeth to the end of his life, through which a man must pass pure, ever ready to depart, and willing of himself without any compulsion to fit and accommodate himself to his proper lot and portion. If this reading brought you calm tonight, you're welcome to continue listening in the playlist linked on your screen.